Divorce lawyers of Reddit. What's the most outrageous reason someone filed for divorce? I'm not a divorce lawyer, but this case appeared in one of my case books in law school. Basically, a couple got married, but never lived together. Shortly after marriage, the husband dropped off the face of the earth and the wife had no way of contacting him. She didn't know any of his family, and apparently the place he told her he worked at never heard of him. He disconnected his cell phone and she even hired a private detective to try and locate him with no success. Finally, she tried to file for divorce, for obvious reasons, but for service to be considered valid, the defendant has to be physically handed service papers. Since she couldn't find out where he was, she couldn't even get divorced from him. She had to sue in court just to get permission from a judge to allow service through Facebook, because that was literally the only means she had of contacting her husband. Divorce lawyer here. One client filed for divorce because he owed his bookie $70,000. He didn't want to leave his wife, but he figured he would get half the house in the divorce, which was worth $700,000, and pay his debts. He had already blew through their life savings gambling. He was the worst guy. He had an argument with the new in-laws during the wedding and moved out at around 5 AM during the first night. My client put his wife in an assisted living facility based on a misdiagnosis, the medication of which caused the wife to be unable to care for herself. While in the facility, my client started dating another woman and methinks began using hard drugs. He used a lot of money on both of these things. She eventually got off the medication and got better. Suffice to say, she was not happy about what had transpired. I'm an intern, but the judge I work for used to do divorce work. He has some crazy stories, but this one is probably the most outrageous, though the divorce was pretty justified. Every morning this couple would sit in the bathroom together while one of them had their morning dump. One would sit on the toilet and the other on the rim of the bathtub. This particular morning the wife was on the toilet and husband on the edge of the tub. They started to argue about their relationship, so the wife reaches down, pulls her tampon out, and flings it at husband. I'm told the tampon stuck for a brief second to his forehead before sliding off. He filed for divorce that same day or the next. Staff attorney for a judge. Not a divorce, but a custody modification hearing. Ex-wife wanted sole L&P custody of the kids because the ex-husband was spending all his money on a palm reader / psychic and refused to pay child support. On cross, ex-wife's attorney got him to admit that he was spending all his discretionary income on this psychic. He said he had spent over $5,000 on readings and other services there. Judges frequently chime in with questions in domestic matters, so my judge asked why he was not paying support as his divorce decree required. His explanation was 1. The psychic could read that his children were provided for without his money, and 2. He will be able to repay the ex when he takes the children to Mexico permanently to seek great riches there, which my judge read as my psychic told me to kidnap my kids. I heard of a woman that had her marriage annulled because the groom insisted to bring his mother on their honeymoon. Then, on the honeymoon, the bride discovered the reason he wanted to bring his mother was to breastfeed him. Yes, the groom, a grown man, was still breastfeeding. My boss just got divorced. His wife was telling people one of the reasons was the amount of toilet paper he used. She was a super coupon clipper thrifty lady and would listen when he went to the bathroom to see if he was using too much TP. Not a divorce lawyer, but have done marriage therapy. Had a soldier stationed at Guantanamo Bay that met a local. Fell madly in love. They decided to get married so she could come with him back in the States once his tour was done. She was working on American dishes and was making spaghetti. He comes home from work one day and she's making it. She puts the meat in, puts the canned sauce in, and then pulls an unlabeled bag out of the freezer and adds it to the sauce. At this point in the session she's hysterically crying with broken Spanglish. She's trying to explain she didn't know any better. Through the hysteria he informs me her mother and grandmother told her if she wanted to keep her man, she needed to put her menstrual blood in his food. It was so hard to keep my composure. I was trying too hard not to gag. They both described they were madly in love, but he couldn't let it go. They ended up getting a divorce. Having done this for 14 years, I have found it 100% accurate that truth is stranger than fiction. Paralegal. A couple got divorced over a cat. Wife called cat Snowball because of white fur and only wanted the cat to eat wet food or chicken breast. Husband called cat Lily again because of white fur and believed it should only eat dry food. These two argued for a year over custody of the cat, but did not give a crap about their human kids aged 15 months, 4 years, and 6 years old. My dad was a divorce lawyer. He had a client who wanted to divorce her husband for 2 reasons. He did not have enough hair on his chest. He did not drive fast enough. Keep in mind this was in the 70s when chest hair was a bit more important. Yeah. It would have been embarrassing to show up late at a pool party and your man not having a decent chest bush. A luscious mane of hair from my chest pubis down to my ball throw. I didn't like her anymore. 2 days after being married. In sickness and in health till disinterest do you part. Failed exorcisms. Client had an inner ear condition that caused chronic vertigo, but symptoms could be treated with medication. Husband was an evangelical who was convinced his wife 1 had become possessed and that her vertigo and general crankiness with his methods were evidence of demonic possession. 2. The medications she was taking was enabling the devil to hide inside her. And 3. The only proper recourse was to try various methods of exorcism. He would hide her meds until she got dizzy and then try various methods of exorcism. This included sweating it out, put under blankets, while incapacitated and locked in a room full of space heater, freezing it out, pretty much the reverse with AC, fans, and bags of ice. Surprising it out, he would jump out and scare her like it was the hiccups, but instead of yelling boo, he would recite the Lord's Prayer or Psalms. The final straw was that he tried to surprise it out of her by pushing her down the stairs when they were heading out for dinner. Note, this guy was some type of executive and they still went out to dinner after the stairs incident. She asked for the divorce at an Applebee's that night. I have often tried to picture that conversation as she was adamant that he was a total sweetheart and never acted out of malice or anger. I do my student practice at my family's law firm. Young woman filed for a divorce because her husband drank 1 beer during weekdays after a day of work. The guy wasn't violent, doing drugs, or anything like that. He was just a normal, polite guy who liked to have a cold one after 10-hour shift. They are a very good couple and argue so rarely that this woman's friends told her to write down everything he did to upset her and reread it every day, so she had reasons to be angry about. My mom, lawyer, set the woman straight, told her he just doing what all guys do and to find herself new friends instead of ones ready to sabotage their marriage. Not a divorce lawyer, but there's this famous case that all law students know about. The wife asked for annulment of marriage because almost a year into the marriage, they still haven't had sex. The husband has been avoiding it for almost a year and later on the court found out that he actually only has a 2-inch penis. My mother-in-law divorced my father-in-law so she could have a fresh start with her dream job of teaching blind children to read. Turns out, what she meant by that was destroy my father-in-law's pastor career by telling everyone he was abusive. Got married to the guy she'd secretly been carrying on with. He's a convicted child sex offender. She has grandchildren. She's in a state of complete denial. Paralegal here. Still remember an early case I worked on. Man divorced his wife for her bingo addiction 10 to 12 times per week she went to bingo. She was 82, he was 86. But the all-time greatest to 20-somethings. They were irreconcilable because he kept smoking her weed stash when she wasn't home. I worked as a paralegal for a divorce lawyer. Case analysis was one of my main responsibilities. I kid you not. A recently married couple of 2 years broke it off because the husband would not stop feeding the dog. The dog got outrageously fat. Apparently she saw a connection between the dog and future children. I'm not a lawyer, but I'm a court clerk. The magistrate I used to work with got a petition for divorce and the reason the wife gave was he should have been more forthcoming about his shortcomings in the bedroom. He was frustrated by her hoarding. She was frustrated by his utter uselessness. He filed for divorce, and she was my client. Her prized possession was a room or two full of scrapbooking materials. His prized possession was a yard full of junk cars that he never worked on. They had no children and no real assets. They hated each other more than any two people I'd ever met, and the only terms they would agree to were these: he gets the scrapbooking stuff, and she gets the cars. My client also took the house, as he had no income, and didn't want it anyway. It was the shortest divorce decree I ever drafted. I intentionally squeezed it onto one page, and the judge and I had a good laugh over it. Once the decree was signed and filed, she hauled all the scrapbooking stuff to the yard, and he removed it to the dump. She then called a junk shop I referred her to, and had all of his cars removed from the yard. Edit. These two also fought over a toilet brush, as he didn't want to have to buy one when he moved out. I politely instructed my client to give him the goddamn toilet brush,